Warning, if you have thalassophobia or fear of the ocean, this video is not for you. Accidents are scary enough as it is, but when they happen in open waters, the situation quickly turns into a living hell. From a massive ship snapping in two as if it were a twig, to a cruise ship full of passengers literally capsizing out of nowhere, here are 20 sinking ships caught on camera. Number 20. Costa Concordia. A cruise along the Mediterranean is many people's dream holiday. Or is it? What happened on January 13th, 2012, when the luxury cruiser, the Costa Concordia, struck rocks, might make you think twice. Whilst on its 7-day cruise along the Italian coast from Civitavecchia to Savona, the ship changed quickly from paradise to hell. Known for its luxuries, it featured, amongst others, 4 swimming pools and a water slide, an outside cinema, a casino, and a gigantic spa. But on that day, we can see the nightmare caught on camera. As the Concordia approached Giglio Island that evening, it deviated from its standard course in order to do a maritime salute. This is a common practice that included the cruise ship sounding its horn. But that move led to disaster, and all the luxury disappeared as they struck the shallow rocks. The beautiful cabins and ship were quickly filling with water. The only luxury left was to find a lifeboat as the guests ran and panicked for their lives. A tragic event that became as infamous as the Titanic. The chilling image of the cruiser in the water the next day shocked the world. More than 4,200 people were rescued, but tragically, 32 people lost their lives. The captain, Francesco Schettino, was sentenced to 16 years in prison, and several of his crew also received prison sentences. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. Number 19. Cruise ship crashes into dock and tourist boat in Venice. Beautiful, ancient Venice. Gondolas, good food, romance. Well, the video you're about to see here is not taken from a Hollywood film. This is the frightening moment when a cruise ship crashed into a wharf in Venice, Italy back in 2019. The MSC Opera is a 13-deck cruise ship and weighs a whopping 65,000 tons. With a capacity of 2,500 people on board, you can imagine the amount of damage such a ship could achieve if not able to stop. This is exactly what happened when the engines failed and it started heading towards the crowded wharf in Venice. You can see the people on land fleeing. You can hear the people screaming. A truly frightening moment as the boat drives a wedge between the wharf and a riverboat already docked. The scraping metal of the cruise ship being opened up like a tin can. Local residents were watching in fright and awe at this surreal scene. Incredibly and thankfully, no one was killed, with only a few being injured from the riverboat and no one seriously injured. The event laid the ground for, yet again, more cries to stop the multitude of cruise ships docking in Venice. Causing pollution and now endangering lives, the mayor of Venice has stated that it's no longer conceivable that cruise ships can pass through. Find another route, guys. Number 18. Cargo ship Sea Grand. Drinking and driving is always a stupid idea, but imagine drinking and steering a 370-foot Russian cargo ship and heading towards a huge double-decker steel bridge. Yeah, that is exactly what happened, and in case you don't believe it, it was caught on video by an eyewitness. The Sea Grand vessel, carrying nearly 3 million pounds of steel coil, arrived in Busan, South Korea, and was then heading back home to the port of Vladivostok, Russia. It was supposed to have sailed north along the coast towards the Sea of Japan, but for some reason that only alcohol can explain, it turned into a small bay. Suddenly, it's heading straight for the Gwangan Bridge. Korean officials tried to radio call the vessel, but it's believed the captain didn't understand English and continued going. This really is like watching a disaster in slow motion before your very eyes. As it gouges a huge hole in the bridge and cars stop as they realize what's happening, you watch on with astonishment. To make matters worse, what you don't see is the fact that the captain then took his vessel and fled the scene. He was soon caught by patrol boats and was caught with nearly 3 times the allowed alcohol level in his blood. Number 17. Carnival Glory strikes Carnival Legend in Cozumel, Mexico. When you put 2 carnivals together, surely that must be a great party atmosphere. Well, not in this case. In December 2019, at a port in Cozumel, Mexico, the carnival nearly ended for these 2 cruise ships when the Carnival Glory struck the Carnival Legend whilst the Carnival Glory was maneuvering to dock. There's something surreal watching 2 gigantic ships in the water and knowing that something's gonna happen and you can do nothing to stop it. Captured through the eyewitness video, you see the Carnival Glory's stern is slowly heading toward the bow of the Carnival Legend. It is inevitable that it will hit it, ripping into one of the decks and crushing tens of windows. Inside, the sound in itself must have been terrifying. It's a miracle that no one was seriously hurt, but only minor injuries were reported. Bizarrely, the ships continued their cruises afterwards as the Carnival Company told its passengers to enjoy the day ashore. It's like saying nothing major, just a scratch. I guess so, as those at the front end of the boat thought it was just a big wave crashing into the ship. The company stated that the reasons for the crash were apparently high winds and currents. Well, whatever it was, the Carnival Glory certainly made a legend out of the Carnival Legend that day. Number 16. MV Arvin. Mayday! Mayday! You know when you hear that, someone's in trouble. This video shows the extraordinary moment when a vessel breaks in two. Frightening scenes for the crew on board and the vessels nearby. In January 2021, just off the coast of Bartın, Turkey, a storm was brewing, so the MV Arvin anchored 200 meters off the coast. At 114 meters long, the MV Arvin was built in 1975 and not capable of withstanding such a storm. The horrifying moment was caught on video by the crew and 3 surrounding ships. As wave after wave crashes into the ship, eventually it cracks in two to the panic of the crew on board. What can they do? They start radioing for help. Mayday! Mayday! Can be heard on the video. The surrounding ships can only watch helplessly as the tragedy unfolds. With 12 crew members on board, they take to the lifeboats and the search from sea rescue begins whilst the ship slowly starts to sink. The ferocious storm continued to whip up incredibly high winds, and despite the brave efforts from the rescue team and the crew trying to reach shore, tragically, 5 of the crew lost their lives whilst the others were rescued. Mother Nature's once again sadly shown her strength, and not even a gigantic cargo ship could survive this time around. Number 15. Vita Spirit. A vessel versus $1 million mansion. What do you think will win? Of course, the 225-meter-long Maltese flagged vessel will win this one. The mansion had no chance. In April 2018, the Vita Spirit vessel crashed into the Hekimbashi Salih Effendi mansion in the Anadolu Hisari area of Istanbul's Bosphorus. Various eyewitness videos capture the horrifying moment as she rips open various buildings, destroying everything it touches. You can see the fright on people's faces and the shock in their voices as they witness something they've never seen before, and hopefully will never see again. Fearing the worst for anyone inside the buildings and feeling helpless from afar. Imagine sitting in the restaurant or your home and seeing this beast of a vessel heading towards you. Sadly, the 18th century mansion had immense damage, and naturally, the owners were seeking prosecution of those in charge of maritime traffic. According to Turkish news, there was a malfunction on the ship which disabled its rudder, which of course led to loss of control. That was one big malfunction. The vessel was heading from Ukraine to Egypt, but this stop on the way was not planned. Thankfully and remarkably, no one was hurt and there were no threats of environmental damage. Number 14. Carnival Triumph cruise ship breaks free. Ever hear about the Carnival Triumph that broke down in the Gulf of Mexico after an engine fire knocked out its power? It stranded 4,200 passengers and crew members for 5 days. Yeah, and its woes did not end there either. Having been taken back to the USA and moored in Mobile, Alabama, it was undergoing repairs when disaster struck again. Caught on video, we can see the star-crossed cruiser breaking loose from its moorings and heading towards another vessel also under repairs. The National Weather Service had reported gusts of winds of 45 miles per hour. These very strong winds caused the cruiser to break away from its moorings. The 900-foot, 14-story beast broke from its chains and was looking to rest against another vessel. The onlookers can only stand by and watch in awe as they see the inevitable happening. Touching, kissing, maybe a little groping. It's almost graceful to watch in the choppy port of Mobile. Add some classical music to the video and you have a ballet of cruisers. Sadly, there were unconfirmed reports that workers had been thrown into the water, and we hope they're well. Reportedly suffering a hole in the right stern and maybe even the bow damaged, it's back to the dock for even more repairs for this cursed cruiser. Number 13. Ulysses and CSL Virginia. In modern times, how many times have mobile phones been the cause of accidents? We normally hear about road accidents, but have you ever heard of a mobile phone being the cause of 2 ships colliding? And sadly, this is not just about 2 ships colliding, but also causing a huge oil leak. In October 2018, the Ro-Ro Ulysses passenger ferry from Tunisia collided with the CSL Virginia container ship off the coast of Corsica in the Mediterranean. It's been cited that the collision was due to various human errors and mobile use not just on one vessel, but on both vessels. The CSL Virginia was reportedly anchored at the time and thought that Ulysses had seen them. Unfortunately not, as Ulysses continued its course directly into CSL Virginia. Piercing the CSL Virginia, it took 5 days to separate the 2 vessels, with an oil slick, which could be tragic for marine life, spreading for more than 15 miles. A major anti-pollution operation had to be carried out by France and Italy. With all the modern equipment on board, how can you not see such a large vessel in the middle of the sea? Mobile phones can be extremely useful, but please, not when driving cars, steering large vessels, or generally anything moving. Number 12. Stellar Banner. There's something sad about seeing a behemoth of a ship such as the Stellar Banner slowly sinking into the water, especially as it was finally intentionally sunk after a 3-month salvage operation. It's like putting a beast to its inevitable death. In maritime terms, this is called scuttling, when the decision's taken to purposefully sink the ship instead of bringing it back to shore. The giant Stellar Banner was carrying a massive 306,000 tons of iron ore on its way to Qingdao, China, when it ran aground approximately 100 kilometers from the coast of São Luís in Brazil. Experiencing substantial bow damage, a salvage operation was quickly started to avoid pollution. Luckily, the 20 crew members were evacuated and no injuries or deaths to the crew were reported. Owned by Polaris Shipping, the salvage operation thankfully managed to remove approximately 145,000 tons of iron ore and 3,500 tons of fuel oil in order to prevent an oil spill. Deemed to be unseaworthy, the decision was made to fill the ship with water to sink it after all risks of pollution were removed. Water leaks into the gigantic vessel as she takes her last breaths before disappearing into the darkness of the sea. Number 11. Hornblower vessel crashes into San Diego Pier. Could ever a boat be more aptly named? One of the Hornblower Cruises vessels had to blow its horn several times in urgency in April 2016 as it approached a San Diego pier without stopping. Frightening footage caught by an eyewitness caught this 142-foot whale-watching boat heading straight for the pier with everyone running for safety. It seems that the Adventurer Hornblower experienced a mechanical malfunction that caused the throttle to send the vessel straight forward without stopping into the pier. As the vessel crushes the concrete pier, we fear for the safety of those innocent bystanders, young and old. The horn blowing hard to warn everyone, people started to scatter and help those who couldn't move so fast. The vessel can carry up to 550 people, but that day, luckily, only 137 people were on board. Luckily and incredibly, no one was seriously injured on or off the boat. 7 passengers suffered minor to moderate injuries, with only 3 sent to local hospitals. Limited damage was done to the boat and the brick walkway on the Embarcadero, but it could have been a lot worse. Let's hope there was more success whale and dolphin watching than there was in bringing this boat back into the dock. Number 10. MSC Armonia cruise ship hits into dock in Honduras. Captains, please be careful of docks. Onlookers on a port in Honduras had a real surprise and started filming as in came the huge MSC Armonia cruise ship ready to dock. Instead of gliding gracefully into dock at the port of Isla Roatan, Honduras, the large cruise ship missed its mark and slowly but surely proceeded to destroy part of the pier. Once settled, the onlookers gathered in surprise to take in the surprising sight. They do not see this happen every day. Now, this may not have been the biggest of crashes, and we're sure that the cocktail-sipping cruisers barely felt a ripple in their cocktails, but nonetheless, a crash is a crash. It could have been a lot worse and taken out a huge chunk of the miniature port in comparison to the size of the cruiser. Fortunately, no one was hurt and there was no damage to the environment. The passengers and crew on board the Armonia were able to disembark and enjoy the tourist attractions of Honduras. The minor damages to the Armonia were repaired overnight, and the cruise ship went quietly on its way to its next destination the following day. Let's hope the captain took more care docking into his next port in Belize. We can't keep rebuilding ports. Number 9. Star Princess Fire 2006. A wayward cigarette has been the cause of many catastrophes in history, and the Star Princess cruise ship was another one to add to the history files. In March 2006, whilst cruising the Caribbean, Richard Liffage, aged 75, tragically lost his life when his cruise ship, the Star Princess, caught fire. Sailing through the moonlit Caribbean, it sounds like a dream trip for the 2,690 passengers and 1,123 crew members on board. But around 3 a.m., disaster struck as flames started bellowing out from the cruise ship. With a reported build cost of $430 million, the luxury was quickly burned out of it. About 100 rooms were affected, and as it sailed into Montego Bay's port the following day, the 85 exterior cabins most affected were a stark contrast to the gleaming white princess. Apparently started by a cigarette, the fire spread quick, and panic soon ensued as passengers were quickly directed to safety. The heat of the flames was so intense that metal was twisted and cabins destroyed. From moonlight to firelight, paradise can turn to hell very quickly. Another 11 people were injured, but our condolences go out to Richard Liffage and his family. The cruise was obviously canceled and passengers sent back home, all for the sake of a cigarette. Number 8. Cargo ship smashes into giant dock cranes in Taiwan. Boats can do all sorts of damage. We've seen them crashing into each other, crashing into ports, causing oil spills, and now we see them taking out gigantic port cranes. In June 2021, in Kaohsiung, southern Taiwan, an 86,000-ton cargo ship was preparing to dock when disaster struck. Caught on camera by several onlookers, you can hear the horrible grinding of a boat against the concrete port, and you know it's not a good sound. It got worse. The OOCL Durban container ship, belonging to a Hong Kong shipping company, continued to collide with a stationary vessel and then eventually a huge gantry crane at the same wharf. What ensues next at the busy port is the impressive sight of the crane crashing to ground and taking the neighboring crane with it. A domino effect, which in turn collapses into several shipping containers, sending them crashing to the ground. It was a scary moment, and miraculously, no one was seriously hurt. People are running in all directions for cover. Sadly, a 58-year-old dock worker suffered a laceration on his right arm, but fortunately recovered in the hospital. Another 2 workers were trapped inside the crane, but were thankfully rescued unhurt despite their scary moment. What could have been a disastrous moment remained just a dramatic moment to be told later at the bar. Number 7. Epic ferry boat smashes into house. Oh my goodness, oh my gosh, are the gasps of disbelief you can hear from the eyewitnesses video of a ferry crashing into a house. Imagine you're on your vacation and just gently taking your ferry and enjoying the sights. All of a sudden, you sense that the ferry is not heading in the right direction. You take out your camera and start filming because you can sense a huge accident coming. You're right. Slowly but surely, your ferry is moving straight towards a port house. You can only hope that no one's in there. You hear people laughing in disbelief. Surely that's a nervous laugh because there's nothing funny about someone's house being destroyed. And destroyed it was. You see people coming out from within the house in dismay and thankfully not injured by the accident. The wooden structure crumbles as the bow of the boat pierces the house and all around it. Casually, the boat reverses back out to reveal the full damage that it's done. We sure hope the house was insured and the ferry company pays for all damages. Always be ready with your camera, even on a ferry, as you never know what might happen. Number 6. Ship crashes into crane at port, causing huge fire. Watch this out-of-control and massive ferry crash head-on into a crane, making it collapse. The incident happened at the port of Barcelona, Spain on Wednesday, the 31st of October 2018, and it was a complete disaster. The collision and collapse actually triggered a huge fire afterwards. Ironic, I know, as there aren't many examples of fires happening so close to a huge body of water. But in this case, it was quite serious, as they had to issue a dangerous chemical alert. According to a Barcelona city spokeswoman, nobody was injured. A few minutes after the accident, fire trucks and ambulances appeared at the scene, rushing to address any issues. The fire was managed and eventually put out a few hours after the ship had crashed. According to union bosses, the incident was caused due to bad weather. A similar statement was maintained by the Italian firm that owns the ferry called Grandi Navi Veloci. Their officials stated that the ship deviated from its course due to currents and strong winds, and that the captain couldn't have avoided the collision. An alert for sea pollution was also activated by the Civil Protection Department just to make sure that all marine wildlife stayed protected and safe. Number 5. Bulk carrier and tanker collision. The DGS, or the Indian Directorate General of Shipping, had to issue a circular in May 2015 after a collision between a bulk carrier and a tanker occurred. The bulk carrier was flying a foreign flag and was loaded partway with cargo of iron ore. On the other hand, the oil tanker was anchored. The carrier had arrived to port at 8:13 and was instructed to wait for her berthing turn at the anchorage. A little later, at 9 o'clock on the same day, the vessel was finally instructed by port control to pick up anchor and sail towards the pilot station. And so she did, at a speed of about 4 to 6 knots. It's important to note that at this time, the visibility was dangerously low due to drizzle and light rain. This is when the oil tanker picked up an echo on the radar, like something's right ahead of them, but they couldn't see anything, and also none of their repeated calls were answered. At 9:59, the chief officer finally saw the massive boat that was sailing straight towards them, obviously reporting it to his superiors. They altered their course, but it was too late. Both ships suffered extensive damage, and all because of some light rain. Number 4. 633-foot container ship runs aground in Hong Kong. A huge German container ship ran aground in Hong Kong on April 6, 2014. Hong Kong residents were traumatized and had to sit back and watch while a 633-foot-long ship headed straight into their shoreline. The incident happened around 3:21 p.m. local time when the gigantic German vessel collided with a seawall near Stanley Ho Sports Center in the residential area of Pak Fu Lam. Imagine how it must have felt to see the spectacle from ashore. Thankfully though, nobody was hurt, on board or otherwise, mainly because the captain was smart enough to drop the anchor to slow down the ship. The vessel's name is the Hansa Constitution, and she was supposed to travel in the East Lama Channel on her way towards nearby Shenzhen, China. But her route was affected by heavy monsoon winds, and also because of engine failure that most likely threw her off her course. The images are quite impressive. It seems almost unreal that a ship that size is bound to the moods of the weather, but that's how it is. In the ocean, it is extremely hard to radically change one's course, as the water all around the vessel pushes it in whatever direction it wants. Number 3. Alanis and Florence Spirit. This devastating collision took place at the Welland Canal in Ontario, Canada on July 13, 2020. The Florence Spirit, the black freighter, was heading down the canal towards Lake Ontario, and the Alanis, the red freighter, was heading to Lake Erie. They were both minding their own business when suddenly this collision happened. The two giant vessels slammed into each other on the starboard side near each other's anchors. Thankfully, there were no injuries in either of the two big freighters. The reason for the accident is still a mystery, and the TSB, or Transportation Safety Board of Canada, has launched an ongoing investigation. Lake freighters, or what they're called locally, Lakers, are bulk carrier vessels that travel the waterways of the North American Great Lakes, and there are hundreds of them in service at the moment. That's what makes this collision all the more improbable. The Welland Canal is a 26-mile canal that connects Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, so it has a lot of passage. Both pilots from the Alanis and from the Florence Spirit were reportedly in full communication with each other prior to the accident, which makes this incident all the more absurd. Number 2. Container ship hits jetty while coming alongside. The jetty at the Jawaharlal Nehru port in Nhava Sheva was partially damaged after a massive container ship ran aground. The ship belongs to the CMA-CGM Group, which is a French container transportation and shipping company. They use 257 shipping routes between 420 ports in 160 different countries. But this captain couldn't see the jetty right in front of him. You can even see that he drops the anchor 2 seconds before hitting the concrete. I'm not sure that can help at that point. According to Chetan Kakti, the senior inspector of the Nhava Sheva police station, the ship was dropping anchor at the port in the afternoon when it unfortunately hit the jetty while trying to make a turn. But in the video, you can clearly see that isn't the case. Although it looks quite intimidating, the damage was not major and nobody was injured. This is evidently a huge port with tons of daily traffic, and the workers that are filming the incident don't seem very scared by the situation. My guess is that they've had to deal with similar situations in the past. But if your Amazon package is late this month, now you know why. Number 1. Luxury cruise liner collides with bridge in China. Imagine being the captain of a brand new luxury cruise ship and crashing it the first time you're behind the wheel. That is exactly what happened to the captain of the Pearl No. 7, a 158-meter-long, 7-story-high, newly built holiday cruise ship. Well, to his defense, the ship was actually being towed. They were trying to sail under a bridge in Wenzhou, East China's Zhejiang province, when they had to learn the hard way that the ship was actually taller than the bridge. Talk about bad luck. The incident left 2 of the ship's chimneys completely destroyed and a very obvious abrasion on the bridge. Luckily, no casualties were reported either on the bridge or on the cruise. Some witnesses said that the main structure of the bridge actually swayed noticeably at the moment of the collision. It's believed that the accident happened in the first place because the boat was higher up on the water than normal due to the fact that it was empty of passengers or cargo. But Yang Tao, the chief engineer of the company that owns the bridge, stated that the city's maritime safety department is launching an investigation to determine the cause of the collision. As you can see, the ocean is a very scary place. And that thing they say about planes being safer than cars, that doesn't really apply for boats. Do you think you'll be able to go on board a ship after this video? Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on screen right now. See you next time.